Anton Brender. Anton, thank you so much for having us a few minutes in Negocios Televisión.
My pleasure.
Anton, I want to ask you, amid the new COVID concerns with Omicron as the most infectious variant, which is the main scenario that you look at in this moment?
I think there is no main scenario right now. That's a problem. Nobody knows exactly how Omicron is going to affect our health and the economy. So right now, everybody is in some kind of fog. And volatility is here to stay for a while, as long as we don't have more information about the impact of Omicron and the capacity we have to control its expansion and its impact on the economy. I think we're bound to remain in volatility, and there is no main scenario. Everybody is trying to guess what's behind the fog, but nobody exactly knows for the moment. It will take a few weeks, I think, until things this fog dissipates.
Mm-hmm. And which investor sentiment is driving markets right now?
I'm sorry, what investments? Well, I think it's a sentiment of uncertainty. People fear that Omicron is going to be a repeat of what we just went through. And that, of course, would slow down the economy and would affect firms' profits and everything, as we have feared in the past. At the same time, and that is what makes the situation much more complicated, we're in a situation in which inflation is much higher than it was 2 years ago. So it's a repeat of the same kind of uncertainties in an environment in which inflation is already very elevated for various reasons. And this is what makes managing the macro management of this situation quite complicated. You have the health problems, you have the legacy of 2 years of supply chain disruptions, and you have this new virus coming. So I think uncertainty is here to stay for at least a few weeks. Our main scenario, to be frank, is that the economy muddles through this uncertainty and the fog dissipates, and we will be back on the kind of trajectories everybody was expecting before this new variant. Mm-hmm. But for a while, we won't be sure.
Uncertainty, Anton, is the main word in this moment. And as you said, inflation pressures keep high. Which are your perspectives for inflation next year?
Well, inflation, before the new variant, our perspectives for inflation were, a strong inflation this year until the beginning of next year, and then a deceleration. But this will still put inflation in the US, for instance, on average at 5%, close to 5% this year and close to 5% next year on average, but with a clear deceleration to be visible during next year. And in Europe, it's about the same kind of scenario. Much higher inflation, something that could be close to 3% this year, and on average could still be around, not too far from 3% next year, but with a profile of deceleration across the year, because most of the tensions that have been building up during the last months, we believe, would dissipate. But again, how the virus is going to affect this main scenario, to me, is still very uncertain. It could go both ways. It could amplify in some parts of the economy inflationary tensions. At the same time, if it slows down the economy, it will slow down inflation. So how those forces are going to balance in the near future, this is a big uncertainty we're confronted with right now.
Mm-hmm. And Jerome Powell has said it is time to retire transitory for inflation. What does it really mean for markets?
Well, he's going to start tapering. That's something we believe, and I think they have no choice but to start tapering and maybe even accelerate their tapering. At the same time, what matters most for markets, I believe, is what they're going to do with rates. And communication by the Fed, exactly as Jerome Powell has been doing today, is going to be essential in driving rates, long-term rates, bond rates, in the coming months. Tapering is going to marginally affect bond rates, I believe, in the short term. What is going to matter more is communication on when is the first hike and what is going to follow as far as policy rates are concerned. And this is going to be the key instrument the Fed will use. Communication over the next months is going to be the key tool of monetary policy.
Mm-hmm. And well, Powell said it's appropriate to consider finishing the Fed's tapering of asset purchases a few months earlier than previously expected. We will have in 2 weeks several monetary policy meetings, the Fed, the ECB and the Bank of England too in the same week. What can we expect from these meetings?
I think here again, we'll know a bit more about the virus by then. Remember that central bankers don't have to tell you today what they will be doing in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they have more elements on the situation, and they will decide how far they go in accelerating or not accelerating, in the case of the Fed, the tapering. I believe that the Fed is going to keep this idea that the tapering can be slightly accelerated in any case. They won't give up the idea that tapering is necessary, and they might accelerate it a bit or not do anything if the variant seems to be more, more negative, more toxic than what we know from right now. But my guess would be that they will accelerate the tapering, and the Bank of England has a much less predictable way of handling monetary policy. I mean, they've been a bit fuzzy during the last meeting, so I don't know how they will act this time.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Anton, what are for you the visible and invisible issues that are facing global economies?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question, because I don't hear you very well.
The visible and invisible issues that are facing global economies.
Oh, the risks that are facing the global economy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, is that the question, yeah?
Yeah, the more invisible, the
more invisible.
Yeah.
Remember that we're surrounded by many problems besides the pandemic. I mean, a lot of disruptions have been here. On one hand, you could fear that some tensions, some geopolitical tensions could arise. At the same time, you could fear that, and the two could combine, that the price of oil and the price of energy could be affected by those geopolitical tensions. So we could fear pick up in oil prices or things like that could disrupt even more things. But with this new variant threatening activity, I don't think that the other fears in the short term will matter much more. I think the key problem right now, the key risk, is related to the variant. That was the main kind of risk everybody was leaving aside for a while. Now we realize that the pandemic is still not under control, and this is going to be the main source of worries for the coming weeks, I would say, and then something else is going to come up,
Brender,
unfortunately.
thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.